3,000 feet above the Caribbean Sea, dawn breaks over turquoise waters streaked with silver. The Venezuelan coast glows faintly in the distance, silent, unaware of what's coming. Beneath the clouds, a U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Zumwalt DDG-1000, glides across calm waves, like a shadow of steel. Its decks hum with energy. Its laser defense array, the HELIOS Mk-II, is fully charged. On radar, dozens of unidentified drones approach from the north, sleek delta-wing designs marked with faint red stars. Chinese-made reconnaissance UAVs deployed by Venezuela have entered the kill zone. Suddenly, the destroyer's sensors flare red. The air fills with static. A single command echoes across the bridge, weapons free. In an instant, the sky ignites. Beams of coherent light slice through the clouds, vaporizing targets in seconds. The ocean reflects each explosion like shards of lightning. The Caribbean is no longer peaceful. It's a proving ground for a new kind of warfare. The question remains, was this an accident or a message? At 0647 local time, the USS Zumwalt's combat systems lock into synchronized engagement. On the horizon, faint silhouettes of the Venezuelan coastline shimmer beneath tropical haze. The Caribbean wind carries the hum of turbines and distant thunderclouds, natural sound blending with mechanical purpose. Onboard Commander Adrian Wolf, a 38-year-old naval tactician, watches the tactical display bloom with moving blips. Each represents a potential threat: Chinese-manufactured BZK-009E and CH-7. Rainbow stealth drones modified for Venezuelan reconnaissance. For weeks, intelligence satellites had tracked shipments of unfamiliar radar arrays entering Puerto Cabello. Analysts suspected these were elements of a PLA-assisted electronic surveillance grid, capable of mapping U.S. fleet signatures deep into the Caribbean. The Pentagon's Joint Task Force South, stationed in Key West, confirmed what many feared: Beijing was testing its battlefield technologies under Venezuelan cover. Operation Helios was born a classified field test of America's latest high-energy defense prototype. The HELIOS Mk-II was unlike any previous weapon mounted on a U.S. destroyer. Instead of explosive ordnance, it fired concentrated energy, a 150-kilowatt laser beam guided by AI-assisted optics, capable of tracking and neutralizing multiple aerial targets simultaneously. Power was drawn from Zumwalt's Integrated Power System (IPS), a revolutionary design able to reroute 78 megawatts between propulsion and weapons in real time. In theory, it meant infinite ammunition. As long as the turbine spun, the weapon could fire. Now, theory met reality. At 0649, the first wave of drones crossed into the engagement perimeter 14 miles out, flying low at 200 knots. Venezuelan radar operators believed they were invisible under the cloud layer. They were wrong. Zumwalt's AN-SPY-6 radar detected each micro-reflection, plotting them in real time. Wolf gave a short nod. The Helios turret swiveled silently toward the coordinates, its lens glowing faint amber as it charged. "Target lock confirmed," murmured the fire control officer. A burst of invisible heat lanced through humid air. One drone's composite skin bubbled, ruptured, and disintegrated before its onboard AI could respond. Another veered sharply, but the beam followed, precise, merciless, surgical. Within 30 seconds, 6 drones had vanished from the sky. The radar display thinned like fog burning away at sunrise. Then came the counterattack. At 0652, the second wave emerged, heavier, faster, and smarter. Chinese engineers had built redundancy into these UAVs' AI adaptive routing and optical camouflage systems that distorted radar signatures mid-flight. On Venezuelan command frequencies, chatter erupted. Operators from the Bolivarian Air Defense Corps tried to regain control, but jamming interference from the U.S. ship rendered their commands useless. Desperation turned to confusion. In Caracas, Defense Minister General Marquez received word that the drones had gone dark. Reports described beams of light seen offshore followed by sudden fireballs. State television tried to dismiss it as lightning strikes, but social media videos told another story: glowing arcs captured from fishing boats slicing the dawn sky. The footage went viral within hours. At sea, the tension thickened. The destroyer's AI threat assessment algorithm flagged a new anomaly, a single CH-7 stealth drone, cruising higher than the rest, broadcasting no identification codes. Its flight path was direct toward the Zumwalt. Unknown contact 10 miles descending fast, the radar operator called. Commander Wolf didn't hesitate. Track it. Full output. The Helios lens reoriented, focusing its beam through fluctuating air density. Clouds refracted the light, scattering the beam's energy. The CH-7 closed distance, its carbon coating diffusing the thermal lock. For 10 agonizing seconds, the Zumwalt was blind. Then the beam reacquired. A silent flash, the drone's fuselage ruptured midair, scattering molten fragments into the sea. Sensors confirmed destruction. The control room exhaled as if awakening from a trance. Wolf, however, stared at the fading contact, his jaw set. "That wasn't Venezuelan programming," he muttered. "That was Chinese control AI." Thousands of miles away in Beijing, inside a secure facility under the PLA Strategic Support Force, HOT, engineers observed telemetry streams that abruptly cut to black. The test connection was lost. Data fragments revealed one thing: the laser intensity exceeded expected parameters by 40%. The Americans had advanced further than China's own Starfire project, and they had just proven it publicly. By midday, global news networks carried the story. Unidentified drones destroyed by U.S. Navy laser weapon read the breaking headlines. Venezuela called it an act of aggression. China remained silent. The Pentagon refused to comment. But in internal briefings, the operation was hailed as a technological milestone, the first confirmed energy weapon kill in open waters. Meanwhile, the debris recovered near Isla Margarita told a darker truth. Fragments bore not only Chinese manufacturing codes, but embedded microchips linked to Beidou military GPS systems, proof of direct coordination. Analysts concluded the drones weren't surveillance tools. They were part of a live electronic warfare test mapping frequencies of U.S. naval radars in real time. The political firestorm was immediate. Washington accused Beijing of using Venezuela as a proxy testing ground. Beijing countered, calling it fabricated propaganda. Caracas, caught in the crossfire, denied any knowledge of PLA involvement, yet satellite data showed Chinese transport planes had landed in Mk-II only days earlier. For Commander Wolf and his crew, the mission was over, but the message was clear. The battlefield of the future wasn't fought with bullets or bombs. It was fought with light data and speed. On the bridge, Wolf watched the horizon glow under the rising sun. The sea was calm again, but his mind wasn't. He knew this skirmish would echo far beyond these waters. As the Zumwalt changed course north toward Florida, Waters' encrypted orders arrived. Maintain radio silence. Proceed to classified debrief. Operation Helios was officially concluded. But the operation's aftershock was just beginning, rippling through intelligence agencies, foreign ministries, and weapons labs worldwide. For the first time in modern warfare, a superpower had neutralized another's technology in a single precise act, without missiles, without casualties, without warning. But across the ocean, others were watching and planning their response. In Beijing, under the fortified complex of the PLA Strategic Support Force Command, red emergency lights flickered along steel corridors. Dozens of analysts huddled around a giant display, an orbital map of the Caribbean overlaid with streaming telemetry. All data feeds from Venezuela's drone test had flatlined. At the center of the room, General Chao Liang, director of the PLA's Experimental Weapons Division, stood motionless as the final image froze on screen, a faint beam of light cutting through cloud. "Helios," he whispered. For months, Chinese engineers had pushed Venezuela to test prototype surveillance drones capable of recording electromagnetic profiles of U.S. warships. The mission's goal was not aggression, it was intelligence. But now, one of those drones had been obliterated by a weapon China had only theorized existed. The Americans had moved faster, much faster. Within hours, the Central Military Commission convened. The order was clear: retaliate invisibly. No missiles, no ships, no escalation. Only information reclaimed and rebalanced. The PLA Cyber Command activated Project Red Signal, an integrated hybrid warfare operation designed to strike back in the digital shadows. Its objectives were threefold: infiltrate U.S. naval communication networks, expose vulnerabilities in the Zumwalt's power systems, and broadcast misinformation through social media channels across Latin America to paint the U.S. attack as an unprovoked act of imperial aggression. At 22:00 Beijing Standard Time, the first phase began. In Virginia, the servers of the U.S. Fleet Cyber Command detected unusual traffic signatures originating from academic networks in Chile and Malaysia. Encrypted, fragmented, disguised as medical data packets, yet their routing pattern matched one familiar signature, PLA Unit 61398. Within minutes, analysts confirmed a breach attempt. The digital countermeasures lit up. Firewalls shifted into combat mode. The cyber engagement lasted less than 6 minutes. Millions of data packets clashed invisibly through fiber cables, a duel of algorithms and deception. When it ended, neither side had gained ground, but one fragment of code slipped through undetected. Buried deep inside a diagnostic file of the Zumwalt's propulsion logs, it waited dormant. Thousands of miles south, Venezuela's National Defense Command was in crisis mode. President Rodrigo Estevez demanded answers from his generals as global outrage erupted. The country's propaganda machine framed the laser strike as a violation of sovereign airspace. State TV broadcast solemn images of the burned drone debris, calling the victims technicians on a peace mission. Crowds filled the streets of Caracas, waving flags, shouting slogans against U.S. interference. Behind the scenes, Chinese advisors arrived quietly. Engineers from CETC, China Electronics Technology Group Corporation, inspected the wreckage. They confirmed what Xiaoliang already knew: the Zumwalt's laser system had not only destroyed to the drones, it had scanned them first. The Americans had copied telemetry, AI pathways, and encryption keys mid-combat. Beijing's drone code was now compromised. In Washington, intelligence reports painted an equally alarming picture. The National Security Agency intercepted chatter between Chinese naval officers discussing red signal. Though its purpose was unclear, every network connected to U.S. naval logistics was placed under quantum encryption lockdown. The Pentagon's Joint Chiefs ordered the entire Zumwalt fleet to offline status until systems were scrubbed. Meanwhile, global media spun the story into chaos. On Latin American channels, deepfake videos began circulating showing falsified footage of U.S. Marines landing near the Venezuelan coast. The videos spread faster than fact-checkers could react. Within 48 hours, anti-American protests erupted, not only in Venezuela, but in Nicaragua, Bolivia, and Cuba. Washington's allies condemned foreign disinformation, but the damage was done. By now, the dormant malware on the Zumwalt had awakened. A subtle fluctuation appeared in the ship's power management grid. Nothing visible to the crew, only a fractional delay between output and feedback cycles. The ship's onboard AI flagged it as anomalous latency, then quietly suppressed the alert to maintain performance. Hidden within the code was a beacon pinging coordinates back to a satellite link over the Pacific, coordinates of every movement, every course change, every energy fluctuation of the U.S. Navy's most advanced warship. China didn't need to fire a missile. They were already inside the system. On June 28th, at precisely 03:17 a.m. Eastern Time, a faint red dot blinked on a classified radar console in the Pentagon's basement level. It wasn't an attack yet, but it was proof of infiltration. The signal source traced back to the same frequency band used by China's Beidou-3 satellites. General Harris Coleman, head of the U.S. Cyber Defense Command, slammed his fist onto the table. They found a way in through the Zumwalt. Across the ocean, General Chao received confirmation. His orders to his team were simple: do not destroy. Observe. Red signal wasn't about vengeance. It was about dominance through knowledge. Every byte of data transmitted from Zumwalt systems would now map the architecture of the Helios weapon. For the next 72 hours, both nations stared into digital darkness, knowing that one misstep could ignite open conflict. The war had changed form again. The battlefield was no longer sea or sky. It was the invisible space between them, where code and light met in silence. The Caribbean storm had passed, but the true war had just begun. 2 weeks later, the USS Zumwalt sailed north of Puerto Rico under strict radio silence. Every signal was monitored, every system isolated. The ship's hum was steady, too steady. Deep in the Combat Information Center, faint electromagnetic fluctuations still rippled through the power grid like a heartbeat the engineers couldn't locate. Commander Adrian Wolf knew something was wrong. The sun dipped low behind violet clouds painting the sea in molten gold. On the horizon, a storm brewed, dense, electrical, alive. Inside that storm, satellite intelligence later revealed a Chinese reconnaissance vessel disguised as a research ship drifted quietly at the edge of international waters. Its antennas reached skyward, listening. The red signal had gone from digital to physical. At 1822, UTC Zumwalt's passive sensors detected a strange pulse emanating from orbit. It wasn't radar, nor communication, it was laser telemetry. The same wavelength used by Beidou 3 satellites. In seconds, Zumwalt's automated defense system shifted from standby to combat readiness. The crew braced, unaware that somewhere in low Earth orbit, a Chinese satellite had just locked onto their coordinates. In Beijing, General Chao Liang observed from a secure command hub. "We have eyes on Helios," his aide reported. The satellite beam wasn't a weapon. It was a scanner tuned to detect spectral emissions from the Helios system. They were mapping the laser's unique energy signature. If China could replicate the pattern, it could neutralize the advantage the US had unveiled in the Caribbean. But the Americans had anticipated the move. Hours earlier, the US Space Force had deployed an electronic countermeasure codenamed Valkyrie, designed to scramble laser telemetry at the photon level. The next time Beidou scanned Zumwalt, the feedback loop overloaded its optical sensors. In orbit, the Chinese satellite flickered and went dark. That single blackout lasted only 6.3 seconds, but it was enough to trigger confusion across 3 military commands. Venezuela interpreted it as a hostile act. Beijing saw it as a US warning. The Pentagon viewed it as proof that China had crossed into kinetic cyberspace territory. The crisis escalated. At 1910, the Venezuelan Defense Ministry announced it had activated its Mar Caribe defense zone. It's mobilizing coastal missile batteries near La Guaira. Fishermen along the coast reported seeing dozens of launchers rolling into position. Meanwhile, a U.S. carrier strike group, the USS Gerald R. Ford, was redirected from the Atlantic into the Caribbean. Radar pings between both sides filled the skies like invisible thunder. Inside Zumwalt's CIC, the crew prepared for the unthinkable. Commander Wolf stood over the glowing tactical table, its surface pulsing with red and blue icons. His ship was now the center of an international standoff. The Helios system was online, but no one dared fire. The order had to come from Washington, and Washington was still arguing. Suddenly, the deck lights dimmed, the hum of the turbines faltered, power fluctuation shouted an engineer. The red signal malware, still buried deep, had reactivated. Its final command sequence launched, transmitting every detail of the Zumwalt's reactor core cooling system and laser calibration to an unknown external node. Cut external links. Now, Wolf barked. But the data had already left the ship, shot upward in an encrypted burst toward the same Beidou satellite that had just come back online. At that precise moment over the South China Sea, a test platform known as Tianlong Base powered up. Its engineers, unaware of the brewing chaos, received an unexpected data packet. Within minutes, their systems began reconstructing the Helios spectral model. On their screens, lines of American code scrolled into Chinese infrastructure. The impossible had happened. Both nations now shared the same weapon blueprint. In the Caribbean, lightning tore across the night. Wolf stared at the horizon as distant thunder merged with the ship's alarms. "We just gave them the light," he said quietly. At 20:00, 2 new orders arrived. Return to base. Mission terminated. Do not engage. As the Zumwalt turned toward home, the ocean glowed with electric storms stretching from horizon to horizon. Above, satellites from both nations realigned their optics, glinting like silent predators. No missiles were launched, no shots fired, but both sides had crossed an invisible boundary. The age of conventional warfare had ended not with an explosion, but with a transmission. In a war where light itself could be weaponized, Every beam, every signal, every flicker in the night sky now carried the weight of potential destruction. And somewhere deep beneath the sea, another vessel awoke its systems humming, awaiting orders. The next flash would not be invisible.